Top 10 mistakes sharpeners make, even experienced sharpeners. And I'm going to start with number 1, and then we're going to go back to number 10. But I think everybody needs to see the top mistakes that sharpeners make. I make it, probably every one of you make it, and let's talk about it. So this mistake is doing walk-away shears. Shears you should walk away from. And what a walk-away shear is for one sharpener might be different for another sharpener. So I'm going to talk about some here that are obvious walkaways, and then maybe some that's not so obvious. And when I say walk away, they're shears that you really shouldn't sharpen. Just don't get in the problem of doing it. That's when we have the worst mistakes and the worst problems, is when we do something, you know, our gut tells us, wow, I shouldn't be doing this. And, and if you're feeling that way about a shear, maybe you shouldn't sharpen it. So here's an obvious one, and we're going to go through these. This is one with a part missing. If you don't have the part to place it, I mean, don't sharpen it. That's kind of obvious. Another one. This one's got such a huge nick. You can probably see that nick across the room, can't you? Yeah, it's such a huge nick that it's just don't just walk away. Don't try it. If they're so bad out of alignment and you're not comfortable fixing them, walk away. This is one that would be the extreme example. And I don't know how that one got curved like that, because this is actually, I know absolutely, is a cast shear. And how it bent that much without breaking, I don't know. But I can guarantee you, if you tried to bend that or break it or hammer it or whatever, you would have to shorten it down to here. So that is a walk-away shear. Yeah, that's crazy. But sometimes it's not so obvious. Sometimes it's one that is out of alignment and maybe you're not comfortable fixing it, or you feel like you might get in trouble doing it. Walk away. Walk away. It's okay. It's better not to have made that $25, $30, $35, whatever you charge, and lose that than have to replace a $200, $300, $400 or more shear. So here's another walk away. This is a Joelle. You say, well, why should I walk away from a Joelle? Because that's not a Joelle. That's a Joelle fake. We've seen fake Jaguars. I've seen other fakes. And how do you know? You really don't know till you've had experience. But sometimes these are walk away. Here's another Joelle that's a walk away. You say, oh, well, this doesn't look bad. What's wrong with it? Well, I want you to look at the inside of this one. This is walk away from any that husbands have tried to sharpen. That is a husband tried to sharpen her shears, and I walked away. And you can, like I did this one, make it a trade-in on something new. Here, I'm going to hand this one to you to look at. That one's fun. Walk away shears are cheap ones. This one's obviously cheap. This says Gold Magic, and it's just a little cheap thing. It says made in Pakistan. It's better to sell them a new pair of shears than to sharpen it. If you're taking trade-ins, like some of these other walk-away shears, and you can get them to cut, sell that to them instead of this. Here's another cheap scissor that's not so obvious as a walk-away. I get customers, they'll buy things off of Wish, or this one came from AliExpress. And, I mean, it kind of looks nice, doesn't it? But they only paid maybe $17, $20 for it, and then they want to pay you $25 to make it cut like a $100 shear or something. Just walk away. Walk away. Two-piece shears that have a wiggle to it. So they give you a two-piece shear, wiggle it here, wiggle it there. If you can't tighten that connecting screw, walk away. Along the same line, pivot screw. This one actually is one of our Bonika shears, and they came in all defective. The little screw was drilled in crooked, and no matter what you do, you can't make that screw hold. If you get a shear with a screw and you can't make it hold its adjustment, walk away. Walk away. If it's our shear, it's covered under warranty, send it back to us. We can't walk away from it, but you can. I've got another one that's pretty obvious. This one was sharpened by some sharpener that just didn't know what he was doing. And I've showed this before. This is like one of my show and tell shears. Somebody gave me this to sharpen. I said, I'll take this as a trade-in. They paid a beveled edge of a Convex. They put their Rideline on wrong. It's got all kinds of little problems. So that's a definite walk-away shear. Now the next two are not so obvious as walk-away shears. And these came in the mail to me yesterday. So this one is a Joelle. And it needs a new bumper, looks like. Looks like it's never been sharpened. And the reason this is a walk-away shear is because the sharpener is not confident in doing it. He doesn't have a flat hone. He's got a machine that's better for doing beveled edges, and he knows he shouldn't be doing it. So, and also it needs some parts that maybe he doesn't have. So for him, this is a walk-away shear. For another sharpener, it wouldn't be. Same thing with this one, curved shears. If you're not comfortable doing curved shears or long shears, walk away. Now you can always send them to, like to me or other sharpeners, and maybe they'll videotape how they did it so you'll know how to do it in the future. But if you think you're going to get into trouble, or before you've gone too far for somebody else to fix it, walk away or send it off to someone. The walk-away shears will change for every person based on what the equipment is and their skill level. And I have one sharpener, I like to tell his story a lot, Ron Ellis down in Florida. He's retired now, but he was making profit-wise over $135,000 a year. That was his profit, not his gross. And just him, no employees. And he never, ever did any shear that was out of the ordinary. He would do regular shears, he would do thinning shears, but if it was a left-handed, if it was curved, if it was anything strange at all, he would send it to me. And that's one of the reasons he made the money he did. He didn't take any time on those. So what is a walk-away shear is a personal decision for all sharpeners, but just know there are some limits to what you can sharpen, and you can always take them as a trade-in, sell them a new pair. But the number one mistake, one you can't back down on a lot of times, is trying to fix a walk-away shear. Beveling a convex and convexing a bevel. If you've convexed one that should be beveled, the main complaint you're going to get is maybe you've made them too sharp and they dull faster, and they're complaining there. Or more likely that it's something with the color on it and the colors come off, and that should have been done without rotating as a bevel. Your complaint about a shear that should be convexed and has been beveled, usually it's, they'll tell you it's rough or it's not that sharp. Maybe it makes a noise a little bit. So how do you tell whether, now on these it's easy to tell, the colored ones. These are three that would be tricky to know whether they're supposed to be beveled or they're supposed to be convex. Now typically I'll look them up on the internet and see if I can tell, or some hint they have in there about it. A lot of it is just experience. This is a Yasaka, and I just happen to know that they're supposed to be beveled. But the clue to it is, do you see how flat that is in there? That gives me a pretty good clue it's supposed to be beveled. And also, it's not a really deep hollow grind in here. It might have a Rideline, but it's not a deep hollow grind. This one is fairly simple. You can just kind of, some of the brand names you'll get used to it. Some of the older shears are going to be beveled, even if they're expensive. These are two that would be really, I had to really study them myself. Both of them have a bevel on them, and they both appear to be convex. See, they both are rounded. So they both appear to be convex. Now here's the trick. You look at the name brand. If it's a brand that looks expensive, that you know, well, then it might be more likely to be convex. Well, this is tobacco and doesn't say anything about where it was made. I don't know anything about the quality of it from the name. This one says Jaguar, and I'm like, oh, well, this is pretty good shear. This is a Jaguar knockoff. How would you know? Well, number one, they don't make any that look like this. Number two, here's the trick. So where I look to see whether they were originally convex and someone else beveled them is right here at the pivot. So I'm going to bring this up for you to see. And I want you to look at the area just before they got to the beveling part. Right there is what I want you to see. Maybe you can see it a little bit better on this side. You see, it looks like the bevel was put on afterwards. So my first thought would be, oh, this is supposed to be convex. But if you turn it all the way flat, you see that area is like no angle at all. And then a edge was put on afterwards. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, let me show you this other one. This one is one that was originally convexed and then it was beveled, and you'll see the difference on it. All right, you see right there at the pivot, you see a nice convex edge, and it's a sharp convex edge. Not like that other shear. But then a bevel's been put on it. So this is one I will reconvex. How do you fix it and change a bevel to a convex? Well, it's easy to go from a convex to a bevel, if that's what it's supposed to be. Unless you can't put the color back on. But to go from a bevel to a convex takes a few steps, and we have other videos that I think you'll enjoy watching that will go into all the steps needed to do that. One of the top problems I see with sharpeners is screws that are installed wrong. And I'm going to give you some examples of these. This one here is pretty complicated. Let me take it apart. And there's like a little bell washer. And that goes underneath this internal clicker plate, which is now like, I guess, an external clicker plate to give it support. But I can't tell you how many times I've seen this one where they put this in the center and then put this back together, because it looks like a little well there. And then, of course, once you do that, you might tighten them up right. They might go back together okay. But these things were just not going to cut. And taking them, you know, I've advised people to look at them when they take them apart and see how they go back together. But if they were already wrong, which it happens, you know, you may not know it. So these little bell washers usually go underneath this. And one other thing to say about this shear, this is the Firefly. It's hard to put together. Very easy to mess this one up. I've seen it with the bell washer up. I've seen it with the bell washer down. See, it's a little bit of curve to it. So you just got to look and see how it goes together the best. And it's super important that little clicker plate is up. So many times, even good sharpeners, we accidentally put it in the clicker plates. There's a little nose or little nipple that must stick up. Now this particular shear, because the blades are so skinny, when you set the adjustment, you want to set it all the way tight. This one's another one that can be easily put together wrong. This one, the screw can be put on either side. So if it's a right-handed person using the shear, you need to put it on this side. If it's a left-handed person, put it on that side. So when you get these shears, just be aware of whether the person's right-handed or left-handed. And you'll see it's one of the few shears that the screw can actually go on either side. I see some of the craziest things come in here. So this is a ball bearing. And I thought, well, maybe they just got the... Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe the ball bearing fits in here. But no matter how much I tried to bang or push, it wouldn't go in the hole. So, I mean, I'm not just imagining. And so I thought, well, maybe they found this somewhere else and this is just missing washers. So I went through my washer supply, got some washers and put on it. And when I put the washer in here, and you'll see even without the washer, you see that piece, it's loose. It just doesn't fit. And of course the little internal clicker plate's gone. But you see that doesn't fit down over, it should fit down over that little square area right there. But that doesn't fit in there. So I'm thinking, well, that's the wrong piece. So to kind of double check it and make sure I'm not just going nuts here, I try screwing it in just on this piece, and it's too small. It won't screw into the nut. Well, now, so the only part that they sent back with the shears that belongs to the shears is the pretty little pink screw, which actually goes on that side, not the back. So these are wrong. So I had to replace 1, 2, 3 pieces, and they sent me 2 extra. So I might need that for a shear one day. This won't fit to that. So I'm cutting with a tip. And can you see what that's doing? It's pushing and then it's actually pulling there. Let's try this other one. Same thing. It's pushing. Let's see if it cuts different going this way. See? It's not horrible, but when I go to wet tissue on this, let me get over here so you can see with me. See? It's not cutting. A little bit, but not great. So let's see if we can fix these. And let's get the magnifier so you can see what I'm talking about. My eyes have kind of gotten trained, so sometimes I can see these things. Yeah, that's ever so tiny, but you can definitely see this. See that? Right there, that tip. Not seeing anything crazy with the Rideline. So let's see, this one here. When I was looking at it in the light, I actually saw a little red Sharpie left behind. Let's see if I can find it on this one. Yeah. Yeah, you can see the red Sharpie that's left behind. It's just not, it doesn't have a burr. So I'm coming in here, coming up there. I don't know if the color shows up in this magnifier that well. But, yeah, there we go. Do you see the red? You see the red? Right there. So, both of these need a better burr. This is a little Joelle. Some of the customers just love it. And this one has been overworked. It's overworked with the screw. Can you see? The screw is messed up. If possible, that screw shouldn't be replaced. It also, someone has been too aggressive with the Rideline, just trying to make this thing cut. Look at the Rideline here. Pretty bad. And there comes a time when, even though they're their favorite shear, if you're going to sharpen it, less is more. So on this one, the only way I would come close to making this work is not trying to add any more work on the inside. It's pretty much overdone, overworked, and you could get it to cut maybe if you can get the screw to hole by just doing a bevel, not doing a whole lot of polish, not really sharp, and just make it very as utilitarian to make the life last. But that's an example of an overworked shear. Whoever sharpened it last just way overworked it. That might have been me years ago. Who knows? Okay, these shears actually cut. They actually cut. And the customer probably isn't going to complain about them too much. It's not a great sharpening, but they do cut. But what I'm seeing here is a mistake the last sharpener made in working the Rideline. They put the pressure in the center and not in the back. And what you're going to see here, let me get my magnifier out so you can see what I'm talking about. You're going to see the Rideline and shiny up the back, and almost really, it's really missing here and very thin along there. So this person, when they sharpened the shears, they either took them apart and put their pressure over the center of the blade, or they didn't bother to take them apart and they just worked them together, which would have made them think they were flat when they weren't. So let me let you look at this. And you can see how the Rideline actually dips down. Now this part here where my finger is the back of the blade. That's not the sharp side, but it's got the nicer Rideline. Do you see that? And then the front part right here, that Rideline dips down. Yeah, look at there. It didn't even come to it. So this is like one of the big mistakes I see. It can be corrected by making sure that you put your pressure there, but you would never be able to take that right off the back. So it would always, but you know, stylists ain't going to notice that. But that is the mistake of not putting your pressure in the right place for your Rideline. On this one, if you were going to do the Rideline, you would need to take it apart, and your pressure is going to go here, not there, here. And it's possible the person put their pressure here, but they did a rocking motion. So this was an incorrect Rideline. This is a shear. We've all, if we've been a sharpener, we've seen worse than this. But this has a little bit of a dip right here. Dips down, it kind of comes up a little bit, and then it's sort of a wave, and then look how the tip is all pointy. The other blade's not so bad. So it's definitely something, well, a little bit of a more of a dip down here. This is caused by a couple of things. If you're on a twice as sharp or Okami gold, it's usually you're hitting your wheel and then straighten it out. But if you're on a flat hone, and I'm going to just mess these shears up pretty royally. Let's get something pretty aggressive so you can see what's going on. There's two ways that they create that dip. One is when they're coming in, they're coming with that tip up in the air. So I'm going to do a little bit where I'm landing here and then I'm straightening out. Maybe I'm trying to convex it, but I'm still landing here and then I'm straightening it out to convex. You see how big that dip is here? That's one way that dip is created on a flat hone. Now, of course, I wouldn't normally ever sharpen with something this aggressive. The other way it's done is instead of rolling it and keeping it to the edge like this, they're rolling it and doing this. And that also will create a divot. Along that same line, same mistake along this gives you that wavy line, is they come out and maybe they're pulling it across and they pull it too much this way, see, to get that tip, and then they end up with this really, really, really pointed tip. And that's easy to do sometimes if you're freehand sharpening, because you're working it and you tend to lift up a little bit. So that is one of the mistakes, is creating a wavy blade and a dip at the back and a wave as you go through. And I've also seen people do something like they're coming in here and then they straighten it out, and then they're coming in here and they're doing a whole lot of wobbling and then trying to come in here and fix it, and you get a wave down your blade. And that can happen even if you're talking while you're sharpening, or too much coffee that day. So that's one mistake I see sharpeners make. A lot of sharpeners will over polish a shear. And I mean over polishing the edge. You can't make a shear too shiny, but if you polish over the edge, you're going to remove that crisp sharpness. And I just did it, not even to try to prove something to you. I just did it by accident. And any sharpener can do it. If, I mean, my clamp has a little adjustment to keep you from going all the way to the edge. If yours doesn't, you want to back off or just be very gentle reaching the edge. So this blade I did correctly. And these were ones I had to reconvex. The ones that someone had beveled and I had to reconvex them. So I was doing extra steps on them. But this one I've over polished, and this one I have not. Now, if I feel it with my finger, I can feel the difference in the sharpness. This one, it's a little bit not as crisp. It doesn't grab into my skin of my fingers like the other one does. Let's put it together and see how it cuts, even though I know I over polished it. So this shear cuts wet tissue effortlessly. Cuts very nice. But let's see how it cuts hair. It has a little push. Right here at the tip. See, it's tending to chase the hair. Let's see if we can fix it. I just want to bring a little crispness back. The one that I over polished was this blade. I'm going to put this one in my clamp. I'm not going to go back and resharpen it all over again. I'm just going to lightly bring that edge back up on a little bit more so I can feel a little bit of a burr. teensy burr. I can feel it here at the tip especially. If I wanted to go back and polish it, I could at this point. But I think I'm just going to go ahead and cut this burr off. And let's see if that fixed the problem. Now I've created a teensy tiny micro bevel on there. I could go back and do all this. So let's see how this is pushing. Still a slight push right there at the tip. Sometimes that can be fixed with a nail buffer. Maybe the side that's not as... And I'm just putting a little teeth in that tip. Still quiet. Almost no push at this point. I think they would be happy with that. And that problem came about from over polishing. One of the top things I find that other sharpeners leave behind, and I do it myself, is you leave a little gap between the tips. Now what can happen is you'll cut with them. Maybe they'll even pass your wet tissue test. They'll cut with you. Even you can cut hair with them. See? Cut hair with them nice. But what the customer will complain to you, they'll say, that pulls a little bit at the tip. It's a little bit of a pull and it catches at the tip. Can you see how it caught the hair? That is such a tiny gap. It was just enough to catch the hair in there. And always hold it up to the light, look at it close, and check and see if you've left a gap behind. The way to prevent it is just don't take too much metal off of the tip. Sometimes you'll have to, because like this one was really nicked at the tip. Sometimes you're falling behind another sharpener. Sometimes it's real obvious. There's a big, huge gap between the blades. You have three choices to fix it. Bend the handle, trim the bumper, or shorten the blade. I've trimmed the bumper quite a bit already on this one. This is a really cheap scissor, by the way. It's a knockoff. It's supposed to be a Jaguar. It's a Jaguar fake. This one I'm going to trim the tip. So I'm on my Cymec, but whatever machine you have. And I'm just coming in tip down and rounding it off. And you want to keep feeling it with your finger. Make sure it's not sharp. When I was in Germany, that was a big deal. That feels pretty good. And I might check it on some hair and see if that still pulls at the tip. Still feeling a little bit of pull at the tip. Maybe a little nick left behind. And it is, so back to taking off a little bit more metal. Of all the complaints from hairstylists about sharpening, it's about the shears are folding hair. Let me show you what they're talking about. So I'm going to make this one fold hair. And I've just sharpened it, so I know it's sharp. A nice little chunk of hair here, and watch. See? Instead of cutting, it folds. I can make it cut, but I have to use a lot of extra pressure, and then it still flips at the tip. So I know these are sharp. Customer says, you just sharpened my shears, they're already dull. You ask them, are they folding hair? If they say yes, it's almost always a loose screw. and these are loose. After I sharpen them, I'll always adjust them to what I think is the correct adjustment, which will be probably right about there. Well, I actually do it a lot tighter, but maybe you do it here. Because some of the instructions from some of the scissor companies will tell you that's where the correct adjustment should be, where it kind of falls and doesn't fall down. Now, if I open and close these a few times, especially if I'm using pressure on it, look at there. You see how it loosened up? So, the cause is a loose screw. The way to prevent it is before you give them back, you want to adjust them to where you think it's right, then wiggle it. Give it a good wiggle so all the little pieces set into place. And then check it. You see how it loosened up? A little bit tighter. You don't want it too tight because then they'll loosen it themselves and they'll think, and then they loosen it way too much. The other thing you can do is teach your stylists about how to tighten their screw. Make sure they have the right tools, know how to do it. Warn them that if it ever folds hair, that's what the problem is. But you've just got to make sure that you have that screw tight enough so that if they've opened and closed this, 300 times a haircut, I think it is. Don't even know exactly the number. But it'll keep its adjustment. So that is the #1 complaint from all stylists is a loose screw.